Hi. It's been a while. Starcraft turned 10 today, and I wanted to take a minute to say thank you to all the people and the organizations that have given me this incredible, wonderful life. So I'm going to tell my story. If you heard it before, you've heard it before. Yeah. It all begins in 2007. 13 years ago. In 2007, Mike Morhaime got up on a stage in front of a bunch of people in South Korea and announced Starcraft 2. And that was crazy, right? It blew all of our minds. We didn't expect Starcraft 2 to ever come out. We were all playing Starcraft Brood War at the time, and we just assumed that this was it. This was as good as it was going to get. We would never get multiple building select. It would never occur, but it did. I had no idea at the time. It's crazy to think about. I had no idea at the time, thinking back, that moment where I was in my friend's basement, my buddy Scott, and we were having a Final Fantasy marathon, and our mutual friend called us and told us about the announcement. We watched the video. At that moment in time, my life was set on a different trajectory that would basically resemble a series of jumps off of cliffs without safety nets, and the hope that I would somehow construct a flying machine on my way down. That's how it went, right? So we waited a long time. We watched all the battle reports, and I was going to school for music at the time. I was in a band. We're going on tour across the US, playing shows. Fun times. But every time I wasn't playing the show, I was texting my buddy Scott, and he was telling me about build orders. This was before smartphones for me. Smartphones were out at the time, but they were out of my price range. So I was just texting with my buddy Scott, and my buddy Scott would give me as much information as he could over text. And I would write it down in my notebook, and I would write down all kinds of build orders and all kinds of, facts about units. I would try to memorize the unit stats and all of that stuff. Just super hyped. And we planned a LAN party. So as soon as I would get home, basically, we would all play StarCraft 2 together in my basement. And we had, I think, we managed to get like 8 computers together so we could have a proper bracket. And when I got home from tour, I basically went directly downstairs, put all my tour shit in my room, and just set up the whole basement for the LAN party. Went to sleep, woke up, played my first game of real StarCraft 2, which was a planetary fortress rush on Desert Oasis. Desert Oasis? There was like a base here and a base here, and like the map was shaped like this. It was one of those. It was one of those things. And to the point, my opponent, Drew, did not know that planetary fortress rushes existed, but I had known because Scott was texting me all the hot tips, right? And he got really mad at me. And then we started like sort of pushing each other around a little bit because, that's what we did at the time. And things got a bit out of hand, and he headbutted me in the chest. And many years later at a BlizzCon, Fear Dragon, who looks like, you know, he's a fit guy, but not incredibly strong, is an incredibly strong human being. You have no idea. You have no idea how strong Fear Dragon is. He basically re-cracked that injury at BlizzCon when he hugged me when we met each other for the first time, because we've been interacting a lot online and stuff. And so, you know, Fear Dragon's just one of those wonderful people that I would never have met if it weren't for StarCraft 2, and I'm so, so grateful for that. So 2011, there was a patch in StarCraft 2 that allowed for custom hotkeys, and I thought, okay, whatever. And then there was an episode of State of the Game where Liquid Noni I think he put a control group on a letter or something like that for his Phoenix. And that just blew my mind open, and I was like, oh man, you could redo everything. And then so I proceeded to go ahead and redo everything. And just sort of in my free time, I wasn't committing to any sort of career at that point, but I was just sort of building this up as a hobby. And I was like, man, you know, you could really do that. And I was looking around and like, no one was doing fully customizable stuff. Everyone was doing a little bit here, a little bit there. And I was like, okay. After I had built the first layout and seen it, and I was like, you know, maybe I can do something with this. Maybe it can happen. And my girlfriend at the time was living in California, and we've been doing the long distance relationship thing. And that's very stressful, not that fun for all of you who have gone through it. I feel your pain. And so we had it basically about being apart. And she basically offered to take care of me while I got everything up and running with the stream and YouTube and things like that. And that was incredible. Thank you. And so I moved across the country. I sold all the things that I owned. At the time, I had just sort of moved on from the music career, and I had a degree in music and I didn't have anything to do with it. I had nowhere to go. I was working at like pizza places, and I was working at FedEx for a while and stuff. So it was just like no prospects, no future, no excitement on the horizon. And then this moment of, what if you take this huge risk? And so I did. And I lived in Sacramento for a while. That was nice. It was very hot. We didn't have air conditioning. And that was the first year. I had saved up enough money and sold all my musical instruments and stuff. And so I had enough money to survive basically without any income for a year. And the idea was, if I get through this year with enough momentum, maybe I can keep going. And thanks to the support of fans, of people that I consider at this point to be friends, people like Ektar and Ace and Rothgar and Southern Gamer and Biscuit, they basically kept me alive in the few months after I'd run out of money, which was exactly long enough for me to get a gig casting with the Yegalisk network. There was a guy, Yegwen, who's doing tournaments, and he needed an English co-caster. He was learning to perfect his English. His English was already very good, but he was working to perfect it. And so he wanted like an English native speaker to work with and move that forward. And so big opportunity for me, very cool. And he paid me enough so that I could pay the bills and survive and do all the things that I need to do to keep going. And then Heart of the Swarm hit, and WCS hit. And WCS took over almost completely all castable hours. And for like an up and coming like esports broadcast like us, that was really, really bad. We went from having probably around 3,000 viewers on average to 300 in a couple of weeks after the release of the WCS system. And so it was time to pivot. We knew it was time to pivot. I had been doing tutorial videos for a while, and so we launched this YouTube channel called Tutorial Central SC2, which is still up, thank God. And you can watch the videos, and some of them are still actually relevant, believe it or not. Some of those haven't aged well, but many of them have. I learned how to use Adobe Premiere and After Effects and Photoshop, and started developing these creative skills, learning how to video edit and things like that, trying to improve my communication, improving my writing. Really, really good developmental time for me. But eventually, it didn't work out. Eventually, we weren't making enough views, basically. We didn't hit the view thresholds that our investors for the project were expecting us to hit. And our biggest investor pulled out, and then the rest of them pulled out because the big guy pulled out. This is an unfortunate part of the story. Everyone who has a story in esports has a part of their story where they got fucked over really hard. And this is mine. So everything that I had worked on for about 18 months of YouTube videos released, I think we were releasing 2 or 3 a week. All of that was gone. All of that was no longer my intellectual property. I wasn't allowed to continue the Tutorial Central SC2 channel because of legal reasons, which were never properly explained to me. And I didn't have a leg to stand on. I didn't have any way to argue it. So it's just sort of like, yeah, there's a bunch of rich people saying that there's legal reasons why I can't do this thing. That's unfortunate. Not going to fight them about it because I don't have the resources. And so I started again with JaKaTaKtv. And I never truly recovered from that moment in time. I lost a lot of my momentum in that moment. And I became a lot more reliant on other people after that point in time. And so I moved back to Rhode Island, and oh no, excuse me. This is all one take, so mistakes are going to occur. I actually moved back to Rhode Island before the Tutorial Central thing fell apart because I had broken up with my girlfriend, and then I moved back home because I had no friends. All of my friends were her friends, and so that's you don't want any of that. So I went home, and I lost the Tutorial Central income while I was in an apartment in Rhode Island, which is where I'm from. And I sent out a tweet and I said, like, hey, I just lost my running gig at Tutorial Central. Like, I have a lot of experience in Starcraft 2 esports. Like, if you need a video editor, if you need anything, like, I will figure it out. I will get it done. Like, give me a chance. And almost immediately, it was incredible how fast it happened. But the very first response to that tweet was a DM from someone named Andrew. Andrew is one of the people that basically saved my career. There are a lot of them, but he is one. We have the fans who have saved my career many, 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 many times. And Andrew gave me a shot. He said, how do you feel about moving out to Atlanta? We'll pay for you to move all your stuff. We'll get movers to move it. You just got to take a flight and come down, and then your boxes will arrive. Like, we'll take care of all that. We'll take care of your living expenses and all that stuff, and you won't have to worry about anything, and we'll pay for your food. The only thing that I need you to do is to help make StarCraft 2 content. And I was like, amazing. That's great. And so I met Polt, and I met Violet, and I met Andrew. This is also around the time where I met Neuro, and Neuro came out to the training house for a while. And that was an amazing experience for me. I had a lot of very good conversations with Neuro that really sort of hyperbolic time chambered my personal development, and really formed me into a different person, much in the way that Coulter did when we were creating the core a long time ago. Kind of skipped over that. I created the core with Coulter. It was wonderful. It got a lot of backlash because it was weird, but ultimately we were triumphant, and people saw the good in it, which is really incredible. So that happened in 2012. Let's get back over onto the main line in 2016. And so we did the CSN training camp that came out. I was going to be working on a season 2 for the CSN training camp with Machinima, because Machinima bought the first season of training camp to go ahead and produce it out. They basically paid us enough for us to break even on the project and pay off all the loans that we had taken on equipment and all this other stuff to make it happen. And so CSN training camp was kind of dead. And I was working on some other projects. I was helping Pult and Violet find tournaments to play in, online tournaments and things like that, trying to find opportunities for them. You know, doing some research on their opponents, finding replays for them, things like that. And then Andrew, once again, was just like, hey, I'm going to move to Los Angeles. Do you want to come? And that happened while I was taking a break from the house and staying at home during the summer and just kind of spending some time with my family. And I basically have had 48 hours to make the decision whether I was going to stay at home and have Andrew ship me all my stuff, or come back to Atlanta and drive across to LA with him. And I talked to a lot of people. I called up as many people as I could. I had tons and tons of conversations. I sat and I thought about it. And I decided that I wasn't done with the whole esports thing, the Starcraft thing. I wanted to keep going, and this was my chance to keep going, and so I would. And I moved to Los Angeles. No job, no prospects for a job, nothing. Just like we have, you know, we have people that we know that might be able to help you out, like, but you're going to have to hustle and find stuff because we can't guarantee that you're going to have a job. And so I went to ESL and Machinima. I had a meeting with the Blizzard people for potential employment there. Unfortunately, it did not work out. But after not getting enough basically attention from ESL and kind of feeling out the vibe between ESL and Machinima, there was a guy named Matty Kirsch. Dude's hilarious. And he's this like wild, creative, out of control dude who is like, he's just got the vision about what's going to be happening in the future and what's going to be good. And it was really, I basically went aggressively to get employed at Machinima because of him, and because of the other people that were working there. Most especially, big shout outs to Joshua Piscator-Lee, Unanimous, Ashley, and obviously Maddie. Maddie was a god. And so I rolled into that office with Axel Toss, Alex Rodriguez. And Axel Toss is another one of the people who saved my career and kept me in esports, because he was able to support me. Basically, he was renting out a two-room apartment, and he could afford it pretty much on his own. And he was just so incredibly generous with me and was always there to help me out. And, you know, we rode into work together and stuff like that. And it was fantastic. I learned a lot from Alex, and everybody at the crew, but especially from Alex. And that's actually where I got the shirt. That's where I got this jersey. I was working at we're doing interviews for Team Liquid Heroes of the Storm players. Inside Esports was the project that I was on that Maddie was leading. And we were just, you know, doing some interviews, and they gave us some swag, and it was like, oh my God, this is like a super sick Team Liquid jersey. I'm like a huge fan. Like, I'm so excited. It was wonderful. It was such a such a good experience. Only lasted 6 months. I was only in LA for 6 months. It felt like forever. It felt like a whole phase in my life, you know, as big as the phases of my life are now. But it was only 6 months. I was unceremoniously let go along with, I think, 5 of the other producers for that, because they were like, there are too many producers. We can do this with 2 people. We only need 2 people. And so the last day of filming, because I was on screen most of the time, the last day of filming of the contract that we had, they walked us into the office, and I forget what they said. I was trying to think of what they said to get it right exactly, but they basically said, "You're fired," in a very like weird, uncomfortable way that was just sort of like not clear, to the point where I remember asking like, "So we're done, like we're fired?" And he was like, "Yeah, basically." At that point, Maddie had moved on to other projects, and someone else was in charge, and they decided to let me go. And I was very mad about it. I was very mad about December 19th, right before Christmas. But ultimately, it's really important. It's a really important lesson that I took away from that, because it was the first time that I made real money. Like, I was making a salary. I wasn't getting like a monthly stipend. I wasn't getting money to help me out with things and get me by. I was getting a salary that was more than my living expenses, that, you know, I could, if I chose to, save up and be smart with. But being the first time I had any real amount of money, I blew it super hard on stupid things like taco trucks and Indian food and shit. It was mostly food, because we'd all get together and we'd all eat lunch together, and we'd all go out to lunch together, and we'd eat lunch every day. And it was just like, oh my God, food is so expensive when you eat out. And I didn't think it was going to eat up all my money, but it did. It ate up all my money. And so I moved back after all that time to Rhode Island. And I didn't move to an apartment because I had no money. I didn't even have money to move. I had to like basically come crawling to my parents and be like, "Guys, I fucked up. I'm stuck in LA and I can't get out of here without leaving everything I own behind. I don't have a car." I didn't have a car for any of this, by the way. Part of what started my whole journey was selling my car. That was a big part of the money that lasted me through the year. So I didn't have anything, and I had to, you know, come to my parents and ask them to take me home. And most parents, I think, especially parents of millennials, are kind of down with that and used to that. And that's sort of the way of things for a lot of situations. But my parents really had a strong value in independence, and they wanted all of us kids to be independent and be able to handle our own shit. And so they said, once you move out, you're gone. You can't move back home. There's no such thing as moving back home. You have to figure it out. And so I honestly believe that they were going to say no, and that it was just going to be hard times for me for a bit as I figured out what to do. But they said yes. And I moved back home, and I started looking for jobs online and was completely unsuccessful for like a year. Was like, man, that's some fucking depressing shit, guys. That's some depressing times. I was really lucky that I was able to be depressed in an environment where I had food and shelter and all that stuff, but I was still really fucking depressed, you know? It's like I went through this whole project. I took all these risks. I did all these things. I made it so far. I accomplished things. I built things. But ultimately, like, here I am, you know, in debt to my parents because they, you know, bailed me out of Los Angeles, with no job, no prospects, and a degree in music. Was not great. Was not great. But ultimately, I I got lucky again, and there was a task. There wasn't a position, there wasn't a job, but there was a task at my dad's workplace. And the task was to clean the building, the whole building, the windows, dust, and all the, just dumb, basic cleaning shit, janitorial work, right? And this boss, this guy, my dad's boss, the president of the company, was like a super, super, super neat freak, like to the nth degree. And so are my parents. So I was like, perfect. I know exactly how to satisfy that kind of human being. I know how to make a ridiculously clean environment. And I'm totally fine with doing the tedious work to do it. And so I got a job at that company. Well, I didn't get a job. They paid me to clean in the spring. And when the cleaning was done, they started giving me little other tasks to do. And then eventually I got some other tasks. And then I was working in one area and then another area. And then I had another task. And then I was working for a different department. And eventually I got a desk. Ooh. And I was doing spreadsheets. Ooh, very cool stuff. And I had landed myself in the classic office job position. I went to work 9 to 5, sat at my desk. I typed some words into some emails and some spreadsheets, and I went home. And I waited. I waited for Sunspear, because in 2012 I had met Coulter with the Core. Coulter had gone on to meet Dylan and some other people, and over the years, work was happening, modding and development, Starbow, all these things were happening where people were trying to make a new RTS, people were trying to change things, try things different ways in the Starcraft community, in the modding community. And we all sort of came together in that, like, that place, right? Which ultimately was TeamLiquid.net. Thank you, TeamLiquid.net. We appreciate you. Without Team Liquid and Starcraft 2, I wouldn't be where I am right now. It's part of the reason why I'm such a big fucking fan. Because this year, in 2012, I remember it was all, oh no, actually I'm sorry, 2019, I got the call that we were getting funded and that I would be able to move out to the headquarters and work full time on the game. And then like 6 months later, it was March, that actually all got finished up, and the paperwork and the legal stuff and the processes and the checks and the balances and all this stuff got done and happened. And now I'm here. I drove across the country with everything in my little Subaru. So it was very like a hearkening back to 2012. Except this time I had stuff, so I couldn't just fly across and, buy new things when I got there. I had stuff, right? And so now I'm here. I wake up every day and do my routines and walk outside into the beauty of the Rogue Valley of Southern Oregon. I'm surrounded by tree-covered mountains and birds making song and friendly people waving at me in the street when I take my walk. And then I work on a video game. I get to utilize all of the ideas and the frustrations and the desires that I've been building up over the past 8 years. I get to funnel into something real. Previous to that, it was mostly me trying desperately to convince Blizzard to do things like have a game clock that operates with real seconds instead of seconds that aren't real, and things like that, getting Burrow to be a little bit more consistent, things like that. But now I don't have to convince people that are in a different company that are maybe not as incentivized to take community feedback for legal or otherwise reasons. Ultimately, I just get to talk to my friends about my weird ideas, and they poke holes in them, and I poke holes in their ideas, and eventually we come together and create better ideas, and we just keep doing that. That's my life. That's what I do every day. I am easily one of the luckiest humans alive. Easily. And I have a lot of people and circumstances and events to thank for that. But primarily, it was all about the time where I went to GameStop and I bought this game called Starcraft 2. And I thought it was pretty neat. I love all you guys. Stay safe out there. We'll see you later.